The U.S. government has been partially shut down for 45 days. Congress is on spring break, TSA agents haven't been paid, and the president just found money somewhere and started sending checks, and nobody knows if that's even legal. So let's make it make sense. It's March 31st, 2026. I'm Granthermes, and this is Make It Make Sense. Today on the show, two big stories. First, the DHS shutdown, how we got here, who's actually responsible, how TSA agents are somehow getting paid with mystery money, and how long ICE agents are going to be at airports just sort of hanging around. Second, the war in Iran has hit its second month. Gas is $4 a gallon nationally. Economists are already talking about higher prices at Christmas, and Trump might just leave, declare victory, and hand the whole thing to Europe. So here's where things are right now. Both the House and the Senate are on recess. They don't call it spring break, by the way. It's officially a recess for Easter, Passover, and Eid, but I've seen the photos of South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham at Disney World, so let's just call it what it is. And while they're hitting Space Mountain, the Department of Homeland Security has been shut down for 45 days. That means the Coast Guard, FEMA, Secret Service, Citizenship and Immigration, Border Patrol support staff, and TSA haven't gotten a paycheck in 6 weeks. So how did we get here? And as a quick recap, because this is actually important to understand who broke this. Late last week, the Senate unanimously passed a bill to fund DHS, nearly everything except ICE and certain parts of Border Patrol. That's essentially what Democrats have been asking for 6 weeks. The Senate then passed that bill and immediately left Washington. That left Speaker Mike Johnson holding a bill that he doesn't like and answering to a president who doesn't want this thing either. So the House passed their own funding bill late Friday. Except, and this is the part that would be funny if it weren't so frustrating, there was no Senate to send it to. Now, look, on one hand, this is kind of how Congress is designed to work. The House is meant to be the hot-headed chamber. The Senate is meant to pump the brakes and be more deliberate, and then they work out a compromise. It's messy. It's always been messy. But it's especially weird when one party controls both chambers and the White House and has a majority on the Supreme Court. Now, here's what makes this actually enraging. The president of the Federal Workers Union in Georgia, the one who oversees TSA agents at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, which is the busiest airport in the world, said this: senators get on a plane and walk right past those very officers that they refuse to fund. We want them to get back to it, end the recess, come back to work. That is the most reasonable thing anyone has said this entire saga. These are federal workers. They are doing an essential job. They are screening you in your bags, and Congress just shrugged and went to Magic Kingdom. Around 500 TSA workers have been forced to quit. Hundreds more are on unpaid leave. Air travel delays have hit some of the worst numbers in U.S. history. So, at this point, the president signed an executive order, technically a memorandum, not an executive order, which is legally different, but functionally kind of the same thing. I'm not going to get bogged down in that. It tells the new DHS Secretary Mark Mullen and the Office of Management and Budget to find money to pay TSA agents their back pay, and checks started going out. 2 rounds already, a third is expected soon. Here's the problem. Nobody knows where the money is coming from. The White House first said it was leftover funding from last year's DHS budget, which doesn't make sense. If there was leftover money, DHS wouldn't be shut down. So then the story changed. Actually, its money shifted from another part of DHS that was set aside in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act from last summer. Except, and I cannot stress this enough, the president is not allowed to just move money around without congressional approval. That's not how any of this works. And that's the thing, though. The White House and Republicans know that no court, no politician, and no pundit is going to make the argument, actually, those TSA workers should give back their money. So the strategy, if you can call it that, is do the potentially illegal thing and then dare someone to stop you and then just wait. After all that, Speaker Mike Johnson went on social media and posted, Democrats have now caused the longest shutdown in history, refusing to fund Homeland Security and blocking paychecks for TSA agents, FEMA, Border Patrol support staff, and other brave law enforcement. Okay, let's fact-check that in real time. What Democrats actually are asking for is ICE agents must wear standard uniforms. Reasonable. They must show badges and identify themselves. Also reasonable. They must wear body cameras. Reasonable. They can't wear masks. Extremely reasonable. They have to use real warrants signed by a real judge. That is constitutionally normal. That's it. That's the list. They didn't ask to open borders. They didn't ask to release criminals. They asked for accountability measures for a federal law enforcement agency. The same stuff that we ask of every other federal law enforcement agency. Also worth mentioning, ICE is actually funded through 2029. So the whole open borders framing isn't even really tied to this funding fight in any real way. Now, to be fair, for the first few weeks of this shutdown, calling it a Democrat shutdown did have some logic to it. Democrats were blocking this bill. But then, 2 weeks ago, Trump told Senate Republicans he didn't want to make a deal. Any deal. Even when Republicans floated a bill that would fund DHS and fund ICE for even longer, going around Democratic opposition. When a solution is put on the table that gets around your opponents and you shoot it down, you no longer get to say the other side won't negotiate. And look, Republicans run the government right now. The price of winning elections is that you actually have to govern. That includes dealing with the minority. Trump told voters he was the best dealmaker in the world. It is genuinely hard to believe that there isn't something that can't be worked out with a handful of Democrats. Before we move on to Iran, I want to talk about the thing that nobody is really talking about enough. When TSA agents stopped showing up because they weren't being paid, ICE agents were deployed to airports. At first, they were just standing around, and then they got some training and were allowed to check IDs to help speed up lines, and that kind of worked. And then this weekend, Border Czar Tom Homan was asked a pretty simple question. When TSA agents start getting paid again, will ICE agents leave the airports?
Once TSA agents start getting paid, will ICE agents leave the airports?
We'll see. It depends how many TSA agents come back to work, how many TSA agents have actually quit and have no plan coming back to work. I'm working very closely with the TSA administrator and the ICE director to decide what airport needs what. But, God bless them.
Now, I want to be careful here because I want to explain why this matters beyond just the optics. TSA is there to check your bags for weapons, drugs, 4 ounces of water when it should be 3. ICE is there to check for people, for immigration status. These are fundamentally different mandates. Throughout history, and I know this is an uncomfortable thing to say, but it needs to be said, when an executive-controlled police force is inserted into spaces previously handled by a civilian agency and then doesn't leave, it is a meaningful shift in how power operates. This isn't about immigration politics either. It's about which agency, accountable to whom, has physical presence and authority in spaces where millions of Americans move every day. Does ICE have the numbers to permanently staff every major airport and do mass deportations? Probably not. But the question of whether they'll leave once TSA is funded again is one we should be able to get a straight answer to. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the war in Iran just hit 2 months, gas hit $4, and Trump might be about to declare victory and leave, except leaving may actually be worse. Real quick, warmer weather is just around the corner. Maybe you've got those spring break plans with the family, or maybe you've already got summer on the mind, but either way, you definitely don't want to get caught in last year's sunglasses. Aquila is an independent eyewear brand out of Los Angeles, and they make handcrafted sunglasses that actually look good without the ridiculous designer markup. We're talking plant-based materials, recycled lenses, sustainable packaging. They even donate 1% of all sales to environmental nonprofits, and Make It Make Sense gets a cut too. So you look good and you're doing some good too. The frames all look great, they're reasonably priced, and you can get them in UV blockers, blue light blockers, and even prescription lenses. Right now, you can use the code MIMS25 at aquila.la for 10% off your entire order. That is the best discount offer they have, and you're not going to find a better deal anywhere else. Just head to Aquila.la, that's IKILA.la, and use the code MIMS25 at checkout. The link for that is in the show notes. All right, let's get on with the show. As of today, the war in Iran is 2 months old. Here are the simultaneous official U.S. positions on the war as best as I've been able to understand them. The war is over. The war could be over whenever the U.S. wants. The war is on pause for negotiations. The war is ongoing. The war is ongoing, but Iran is decimated. The war is over, but Europe needs to take over. Again, all of these are official U.S. positions simultaneously. So, yeah, Trump has repeatedly said the U.S. and Iran are negotiating. He even said at some point that they had given in all the way, and then he walked that back, and then he had something new to say on Air Force One just yesterday. Here he is.
But we've had regime change, if you look already, because the one regime was decimated, destroyed, they're all dead. The next regime is mostly dead. And the third regime, we're dealing with different people than anybody's dealt with before. It's a whole different group of people. So I would consider that regime change. And frankly, they've been very reasonable. So I think we've had regime change. I mean, we can't do much better than that. The regime that was really bad, really evil, was the first one that was done.
Now, here's the problem with that. There hasn't been actual regime change. The worst elements of the old Iranian government are, by most accounts, still operating. And U.S. intelligence agencies reportedly can't even confirm who the U.S. would be negotiating with. The Iranians are saying the same thing, by the way, of America. The head of the Iranian parliament accused Trump of market manipulation, specifically dropping posts on Truth Social before the opening bell on Monday, claiming that there are negotiations ongoing in order to calm markets down as oil prices have been spiking. And then, as a way to force, negotiations, the president threatened to strike electric plants and desalination or drinking water facilities in Iran. Those are civilian infrastructure targets. Striking them with missiles is, under international law, a war crime. When White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked point blank whether the U.S. would commit war crimes, she said this.
Look, the president has made it quite clear to the Iranian regime at this moment in time, as evidenced by the statement that you just read, that their best move is to make a deal, or else the United States Armed Forces has capabilities beyond their wildest imagination, and the president is not afraid to use them.
I want to be precise here. She didn't say the U.S. would commit war crimes, but she also didn't say the thing that should be the easiest sentence in the English language for a White House spokesperson to say, which is the United States does not willfully target civilian infrastructure. That sentence was not said. Make of that what you will. Here's what seems to be the actual plan emerging, and this is based on some new reporting from the Wall Street Journal, plus what Trump has been telling reporters who've been calling his cell phone directly. Trump might just leave. He might just declare victory, walk away from a war that caused the worst oil shock in global economic history, and hand this mess to Europe. Here's how that would work. 1. Declare victory. 2. Leave Iran. 3. Don't open the Strait of Hormuz. 4. Tell Europe to just take it. Now, let me explain why the Strait of Hormuz matters so much here. At its narrowest, it is just 21 miles across, but 20% of all the world's oil passes through it, not to mention tens of billions of dollars in goods, manufacturing materials, and rare earth minerals, and it's been closed by Iran, who has also laid mines in that strait so ships can't pass through. Now, every day the strait is closed, it'll take somewhere between a day and a half to 10 days to fully reopen. Economists are already saying that if this isn't resolved soon, the ripple effects could spike prices potentially all the way to Christmas. And Americans are already feeling this. For the first time in 2 years, the national average for gas has hit $4 a gallon, a full dollar jump since the war began. $4 is what gas price experts call a psychological wall. It's the number where people start driving less, changing their habits, and most importantly for politicians, their feelings about the economy overall start to crater. In California and Washington right now, prices are already over $5. In California, it's almost $6. and projections have gas hitting $7 a gallon by this summer if this war doesn't end soon. Now today, Trump posted on Truth Social telling European allies, specifically calling out the UK, and I'm quoting here, "Build up some delayed courage, go to the Strait, and just take it. You'll have to start learning how to fight for yourself. The USA won't be there to help you anymore, just like you weren't there for us." There are a few things to unpack there. First, the European nations did not ask for this war. Iran was not, in any direct sense, bullying the UK before the US started bombing, so the framing that Europe needed to be saved and now owes us one doesn't really hold up. Second, just go take it. It's not a foreign policy strategy. The Strait of Hormuz involves working with a country that has been repeatedly bombed, has no clear functioning government, and is not exactly in a collaborating mood right now. Third, and this is the part that gets lost, if the U.S. pulls out, 50,000 American troops have still been deployed to that region. They don't just disappear when Trump declares victory. They're still there, still at risk, still without a clear mission, not to mention our allies in the region and our bases that are still there. So what happens next? Honestly, we don't know. The U.S. wants Iran to end its uranium enrichment program, scrap its missile program, and stop funding groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. Iran wants every U.S. military base out of the Middle East. Those things just aren't going to happen, and both sides know it. So what negotiation actually looks like, if there are even negotiations going on, is genuinely anyone's guess. What we do know is this: if the U.S. leaves without reopening the Strait, gas prices climb. Our allies are left to deal with a country that we bombed into chaos. Israel, remember, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was a driving force into getting us into this war. He's left unconstrained with goals that we still fully don't understand, which means we are not out of the woods on this, not even close. All right, that's where we are on March 31st, 2026. A government that can't fund its own airport security, a war with no clear exit and no clear negotiating power, gas at $4 and climbing, and senators at Disney World. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you see when these episodes drop. The podcast version goes a little deeper into all this, so if you want the full show, follow wherever you get your podcasts. And head on over to the Make It Make Sense Substack, where this week's Things You Forgot from Civics Class newsletter is an explainer on how birthright citizenship actually works, which you're going to want to read before the Supreme Court takes up this landmark citizenship case tomorrow. It's a big one. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Granthermes, and I'll see you next time.